Dave. I am the host of Vintage Comic Show and Tells, and I'm back with Richard Evans. Hello again.
Hello, good to be back.
Man, I've got a stack of books here that I'm really excited to go through, and I was able to pick some out, and I don't know if I want to do that again. It's too hard. There's so many books. I'm like, I wanted to spend hours looking at them. I finally just had to stop myself and say this is enough. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and we're going to do this again.
It's fun. It's fun watching you go through them.
It kind of sucked because, and I'm telling you, looking at these books fast is not the way to look at them, because I wanted to sit down and really look at them, and I'm rifling through some of the best comic books ever printed and in their best form. So, yeah, that's exhilarating. Beautiful comic books we're about to go through. But at the very end, he showed me a couple of examples, and if you don't mind, I have a couple of raw books that we're going to take a peek at. Amazing.
I pulled this out just because anyway, you'll see why. It's kind of fun, but this is Adventure 79, and so after Jack Kirby left Timely and went to DC, Simon and Kirby, both of them, they worked on Boy Commandos, and they did the Manhunter and stuff for Adventure Comics. And this is generally considered one of the best, but certainly one of the most iconic Simon and Kirby covers while they were at DC. But the cool thing with this one is the cover's great, but we've got two of them. It's a double cover. It's beautiful, and the interior cover is really awesome. So it's always fun to show that. Yay,
beautiful.
It's a double cover. It's awesome.
You want to talk about a double cover that will blow your mind. So how long it? Wow, there's some gloss on this.
Yeah,
that doesn't feel the way I expected it to. So the Sandman was new at this point?
He had started, the original Sandman came out in Adventure 40, but that was the Sandman with the gas mask.
Yeah.
When they took it over, they changed him and changed his costume and stuff. So this is the Manhunter, but the Sandman also got a kind of the spandex treatment.
Okay.
So the Sandman character, let's see if I can find it. It's also got Hourman in here, and there's just so much
page
good
quality is
stuff.
real nice in this, by the way.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was in the back or the front. There it is. That's the Sandman when he changed. He's got that purple and yellow costume.
He looks like a superhero.
Yeah,
now.
he looks like a superhero.
Yeah.
So, and he has a sidekick and the whole deal. So it's different. I preferred the original Sandman look where he's wearing the gas mask. You know, that character so much better, just because he was more of a true old, kind of pulpy golden age.
Yeah, I love that gas mask look. And this is a 9.0, by the way, that particular book. High grade. Pretty copy. I'll let you, as you put that away. I was looking at these Captain Americas, and there was I could have chose several, but this is the one that we ended up saying, let's talk about this one today.
That's kind of the hot one these days. This is a Cap 3. It's the first Red Skull cover. It's also the first published Stan Lee comic. He Martin Goodman was his uncle, so he went to work in the Timely offices, and he wrote the text story that was published in here. So it's his first published work, and I like the Captain America part of it, but a lot of people like this because Stan Lee. Kind of neat. But
you said it was the first Red Skull cover as well?
Yeah, it's the first Red Skull cover as well. Yeah.
Really nice copy. And it was formerly slabbed at 8.0. Beautiful. What year did this come out? 1941.
So that would have been out in early 41.
Captain America #3, folks.
Thank
you. Wow.
Absolutely.
No double cover of that?
No. I'm looking. Show up.
I'm only going to buy one if it's a double cover.
Yeah.
Sorry. We're going to go through some of these slabs. When we were having a chat with Ken, and we were looking at his Frazetta set of Famous Funnies, he had talked about Thunder #1. So here's a Thunder #1. have you had more than one copy of this?
I have, and I actually, as weird as it sounds, I would like to get a different copy than that one. It's nice. Technically, the grade structurally, it's super nice, but it's got a fairly significant miswrap on it.
Yep.
And it's got that grease pencil right on her face, and I I'd like to get one that didn't have that. It's I don't know.
It bothers you.
It does. Your eye kind of goes to it a little bit when you look
Yeah.
at it. I mean, if that's not there, your eye is probably going to her other assets. But that cover is so spectacular
It
that
really
you
is.
hate to have something like that in the middle of the artwork. And that's one of the things that I generally try to avoid. But I got that book in kind of a trade, and I don't have a lot into it. And so it's my kind of placeholder until one comes along that has more eye appeal. To me, Thunder One is, if you are at all a fan of Frazetta, and you know that I am, you kind of got to have a Thunder One in your collection. It's just a great, great book.
Well, let me know when this is your undercopy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So, like I said, I was going through the boxes and I just started grabbing stuff that made sense to me. I'm an L.B. Cole fan personally, and Terrifying Tales 13, book I'm familiar with, definitely stood out in this 9.2. It's not showing now, but you'll see the scan. And it really is the art on this book that draws me in, because what I liked about Cole's romance stuff is like I forget what issue. There's flames,
yeah,
and there's all these faces of like,
he would put a whole lot of stuff into those romance covers.
Right.
There's the one with the snow, where there's snow,
Right.
all kinds of different stuff, and that's very.
This
very
is
similar.
not that, but he's using a thematic effect that's similar, but it's really the colors that he's using in the people in the background. Purples and off blues and oranges, and it's real subtle. That's why I think this is an amazing cover. Love this book.
He was such a design guy. I mean, the design, the art, and the color, it all.
The weight of it.
Again, it's like we
the
were talking.
coloring.
How are
everything.
you walking by that book on a newsstand and not buying it? You're gonna buy that book if you're
They had the
It's
right guy
too-
drawing covers.
Absolutely cool.
Anyone who's familiar with Golden Age knows Strange Worlds #5, and if you're not familiar, you should familiarize yourself. And I saw a copy of this and knew we had to share it. And it's having 4 arms would be great. And this guy looks mean, but this girl, the way he draws females is, and who am I speaking of? Obviously, Wally Wood. Love how he's done women. It's how he did her dress that just stood out to me in this. It just looks like it's liquid and it's falling off her body. And I just think this is a phenomenal book, and this is a really nice copy, 9.0 with white pages. But yeah, I had to at least stop and show this book.
I love it. We did a variant cover of Grimm's Fairy Tales. Terry Moore, who does Strangers in Paradise, lives here in Houston, and we're good friends with him. So I asked him, and he did an homage to this cover on a Grimm Fairy Tale cover. It's pretty exact. I'll show you.
I'd like to see that. Yeah. So obviously, Shock Suspense Stories #6. It's kind of an iconic horror cover, and this art sold at a record price. When was that, like 3 years ago or 2 years ago?
About 2 years ago, it went for $850,000 or $875,000.
So to your point, this is copy 11 out of 12, and and at 9.8 we know that this was not one of
surprisingly there's either 1 or 2 9.9s on the census.
Oh my!
Isn't that crazy?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's
oh wow!
That book. There's at least 4 9.8s, and there's at least 1 9.9, maybe 2 9.9s.
So here we go again with Wally Wood art and this really oppressive hooded figure that it's a bit of a controversial cover, but it's it really is her dress again. It has that liquid, languid look to it that a great artist can really just nail and create form, under that. And she is beautiful. So she doesn't look real happy right now. And there's another hooded, as you see these other hooded figures, just really oppressive.
Very kind of spooky. Yeah, it's just
one of the best comic covers. I mean, the first time I ever saw this, but in 9/8, I mean, it doesn't even look real. It is a phenomenal. I love when you can see through the cover. The pages are so white. Beautiful copy. Had to show that. So yeah, it's such a pretty book. I'm going through the box. I've never seen this book, and I said, well, I have to show this. Shrunken Head cover. This is.
I think that might be his only famous cover.
Out of the Shadows, #8. If you guys aren't familiar with this book, I'm here to tell you, I'm going through the books, and this stopped me like a freight train.
All the shrunken heads and.
Oh, that guy's orange skin, drooling, red-eyed, whatever gruel he's making, with these big bubbles of different colors, and this guy's next.
You can kind of say it about so many different publishers of 50s horror books. There are a lot of them that are, they would have a kind of a thematic look to them. For instance, the Superior horror books or Fawcett's line of horror books. But this is standard, Nidor standard, and I really love the runs of books that they put out with Out of the Shadow and Unseen and some of those, because the covers and the look of the books were awesome, but the stories on the inside were really kind of gruesome. So is a good kind of package of books. We all think about ECs or that, but some of these other publishers just did great stuff. So.
Love this. So I'm having a good time today. Marvel Tales #93, just kind of strolling through, and this is a pretty iconic cover.
Well, the 92 issues before that were all Human Torch and Submariner stories. And then that. So
why do you think they made the switch?
I mean, it's the same reason that they switched Captain America, the Captain America's Weird Tales, and Human Torch to Amazing, that was the stuff that was selling then. The superhero stuff had kind of slowed, and they hadn't kind of figured out the formula to do the superhero books that we know from the 60s. They hadn't figured that stuff out yet. And so, but all of these other things were selling. Romance comics and crime comics and horror comics were the things that were permeating all over the newsstands, and they felt like that would be what would sell for them. And it was cheaper for them to just switch the issue number than to start with another #1 and have to go pay the postal rates for it. A guy that I know through sports cards, he lives in the Dallas area, but he had put together a complete run of all the pre-hero Marvel horror books from this book, and this book came from him. From this book all the way up through, the early 60s Tales of Suspenses and all of that stuff. And the thing that was eye-opening to me about reading and going through all of that and seeing them is I'd never paid that much attention to the post-code 50s Marvel horror stuff. But It was really kind of mystery stories and kind of horror stories, but it was more like early Twilight Zone stories. And they're just great. And there's so many of them and so many great artists in there. And you pick up all these themes that they were using because the code was around, they couldn't do all that hardcore violence and horror kind of stuff. They had to be more subtle about it. And so they would write these stories that would kind of get around it, that were like, just about people losing control.
Right.
Or, having an abnormal fear of the unknown, not being able to see the invisible menace that was out there. And a lot of it was symbolic of, the Red Scares or the atomic bomb or all those kind of things. But those stories, they were so well done. And all of that stuff morphed into the monsters that were created that ended up being the foes for the early Fantastic Four stories. And it's almost like this smooth change. I mean, you think about the first issue of FF, they're fighting the Mole Man and that monster from the deep, and that monster is the same monster kind of thing that was in Goom and Googam, Son of Goom, and Zootak, and all those monsters, and all of those are extensions of these loss of control stories that Marvel was doing in the 50s.
Interesting.
It's just kind of cool seeing that progression.
Yeah, that progression. I never put that together. So a lot of people, they seem to stop wanting to collect once the code came out, but there were still stories being written.
No, absolutely.
Sometimes having a parameter like that will force your creativity to come out other ways. That's interesting because I picked up in the 70s with things like House of Mystery, House of Secrets, Phantom Stranger, on and on and on. And those stories always really captivated me. And I could pick up one issue and I didn't have to worry about a continuation, but there was always some moral to the story, or always, something to figure out. I always wanted to figure out a mystery, and you're trying to think what's going to happen. No, that was a mistake. You shouldn't have lied right there, or you should, you shouldn't have thrown your morals out the window. And I loved those kinds of stories. So, which came from EC, And when I read EC pre-code, there was still like moral of the story type things, but they got a little more gruesome, and they really didn't have to later on. Now, as time went on, they seemed to like just go right back to it.
Right.
Go right back to,
I remember getting a little bit exposed to the Marvel stuff through, where creatures roam and where monsters dwell, and those reprints. Reprint stories. But mostly they were reprinting the early monster stories. But every once in a while they would throw in some, horror story or something from the early Marvel stuff.
I love those covers on those reprints, though. Yeah, that's the thing. They really did kind of reintroduce some sick covers.
Yeah,
the big red robot, or the one-eyed monster under the ice. I love that stuff. Yeah. Last book I grabbed, and I grabbed this for a reason, other than it's an incredible book. Might as well show it, and that's because I'll let Richard talk about the original art to this book, but. Obviously, this is Haunt of Fear 18. It came out in 1953. This is the Gaines file copy. And what a cover.
I got I lucked into meeting somebody who owned the original art to that, and ended up selling it to me. I met him I'd known him, but I didn't know that he owned that cover, and I was talking with him at OFCON in Oklahoma City, and I just said, man, that's if you ever think about parting with it, just keep me in mind, please. And sure enough, a few years after that, he called me up and we did a deal, and I bought the cover. And the cover is amazing. The artwork on the comic is amazing, but seeing the cover, one of the things that's interesting is this character, so it's the first Old Witch, but there's all this stuff going on with like this skin of this face, and there's these ghouls climbing out through the eye holes, and this, these little ghouls that are made of hands or made of, it's just, there's some crazy experimentation going on with the characters on this cover. Well, there's this skull with its eyes rolled back here. Well, on the original art, the eyes here have pupils in them. They were colored out for the published deal, but that means that this guy is still alive and these zombies are climbing out of his mouth. It makes the cover even more gruesome. It's just even more harsh. But the other kind of cool thing with this cover that I found out later was when Russ Cochran was doing all the hardcover reprint stuff of the EC stuff, he was shooting all that stuff off of the original art, and Bill Gaines had kept all of the original art to all of the EC comics. He had all of it. Well, he told Cochran that he would like to give him one piece of art. He could pick one piece, and he would, give it to him as a gift for doing all this stuff for him. And Cochran picked the cover of Weird Science Fantasy 29, which is the Frazetta cover, the famous Frazetta cover. And Gaines said, well, I own every piece of art except that one. Frazetta owned it. And this cover was his second choice. So Russ Cochran got the artwork from this as a gift from Gaines and had it for a long time. And then he sold it to the collector that I got it from. So it's just kind of interesting, but it's, in my opinion, there's an argument to be made that of the EC horror covers, it's the best one. There's 2 or 3 Graham Ingalls covers that are all in the running. Number 17 with the 3 heads is another one, and there's a couple. But I love this cover. It's just always been one of my favorites, and was kind of a once in a lifetime thing to be offered the artwork and be able to get it. So I get to stare at it from my desk when I'm writing checks.
It really is interesting looking at the original art and looking at this, because now that I've seen the original art, the coloring on this is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. But the original art has an allure of its own, because it really draws you in. It's
a whole different deal. I didn't appreciate art, the original art for the longest time, because the colors were the things that was the thing that appealed to me about comics, just the way the color was. And original art's black and white, it's kind of static, and so it wasn't until later that I really got an appreciation for the art itself.
Right.
Which is it's kind of odd. I've always been more enamored with the packaging of comics, the way the colors look and the way the thing's printed and the way it feels in your hand and what would sell it on the newsstand. This may sound weird, but one of my favorite books is Spawn #1, because I think from a packaging standpoint, the colors and the packaging of that book for the time that it came out, it was brilliant. That's one of the reasons why it sold so much, because of the way it was packaged and the colors on it. It still stands up. It still looks really cool.
Yep.
But it's Spawn #1. But these ECs, there was thematically, they all kind of looked alike and looked the same in the way their layout. So there was a branding to them that would draw people to them, and they were the beginning of. They were really the first comic publishers that created their own fandom. There was fandom for EC Comics in the 50s, which was unheard of really with most other comic publishers. And it was all about the packaging and the look and the color and the font and on the lettering. And there was just something about them that was just way
even the trade dress.
Yeah.
Even the trade dress looked phenomenal on these. And they always use different colors to present them, but they always had a prestigious kind of, like, I don't know, next level.
They were just so far ahead of anything of their contemporaries, and anything really, they stand out even today amongst the books that are coming out now. Whenever there's a new reprint run of that line and we put them out on the stands with the new books, they look so unique and almost so much better even than modern comics. They're just amazing.
Yeah, and what a great copy. So that's it for this episode. We just wanted to breeze through a couple incredible comics.
Fun stuff.
Thank you, Richard. I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.